They snatched my luggage, and it disappeared into the swirling black hole of airport chaos. That exclamation has echoed through the minds of countless travelers, convinced that their carefully folded outfits, souvenirs, and personal treasures have slipped into a hidden dimension. Lost luggage is one of the most dreaded spectacles in any airport, and it can ruin an entire vacation before the fun even begins. You stand next to the baggage carousel, heart pounding, watching as every bag but yours rolls by. Suddenly, the realization hits you. Your suitcase is nowhere to be found. Is it stolen? Stuck in some random terminal? You have no clue, and the feeling is akin to losing a piece of yourself in the stark white fluorescent glare of the arrivals hall. What is truly going on behind the scenes? And why does it seem like the travel industry has remained frustratingly stagnant when it comes to giving globetrotters real technological solutions? Well, that is precisely our focus today. We have discovered a fascinating device that merges fingerprint biometrics, Apple's Find My network, and good old-fashioned TSA compliance into one sleek, futuristic lock known as the KeySmart SmartLock. In this extended deep dive, we are going to shift through the entire story, exploring how the travel world has left frequent flyers to fend for themselves with a bunch of awkward add-ons and ephemeral gadgets that do not really solve the root problems. In this all-out exploration, we will talk about how travelers have coped by inserting separate trackers like AirTags or tiles into their luggage, thereby patching together a makeshift smart bag from bits and pieces that never felt truly cohesive. Then we will see exactly what the KeySmart SmartLock does differently, why it might be a game-changing concept, and the possible drawbacks for anyone who swears by an Android device. We will also peel back the layers of its biometric fingerprint sensor, TSA-friendly shackle, Apple, Find My compatibility, and how you can ditch your old locks, and maybe even your old trackers, once and for all. By the end of this journey, you will have plenty of reasons to rethink the way you protect and monitor your suitcases as they trek around the world in those mysterious cargo holds. Finally, we will investigate whether this new travel gadget truly delivers on its promises, or whether we are all just desperate for any glimmer of hope in the chaotic realm of lost luggage. Ready to embark on the ride? Buckle up and keep all hands and feet inside the cabin, because we are about to dig deep. One of the biggest travesties for weary wanderers is the unshakable fear that your carefully packed suitcase might wind up on the far side of the planet. There you are, stepping off a plane in some exotic locale, sweat gathering on your brow from the humidity, only to realize your bag did not quite make it. That is typically when you would start rummaging for your phone, tracking your AirTag that you stealthily placed in a hidden zipper pocket. Alternatively, you might rely on a tile or a Chipolo, devices that, in theory, let you locate nearly anything but come with certain limitations. You can attach a piece of plastic to your keys or slip it into your bag liner, hoping that if your suitcase decides to wander off, you will at least have a rough idea of where it might be. But that begs the question, why have we been forced to rely on separate trackers at all? After all, many of us recognize that standard locks are not exactly what you would call high-tech. You shuffle through a few combination digits or fish around for a tiny metal key when it is time to retrieve your stuff. Or you do not even lock your bag, preferring the convenience of easy access over the risk of some TSA agent ripping your suitcase open if they need to inspect it. We have accepted that lumps of plastic that beep and ding occasionally are the best we can do. Meanwhile, some folks, in an attempt to be super careful, opted for smart luggage that brags about built-in GPS, Bluetooth, or integrated battery packs, only to find that certain airlines then started restricting the use of built-in batteries or deciding that the bag was not fully compliant with security protocols. Talks of smart luggage soared for a while, but as many travelers discovered, the real traveler's dream is to have a bag that can instantly be located and is also physically secure. And so, we have ended up with these cobbled-together solutions, adding padding for a separate AirTag, a separate lock, an external battery, and plenty more complexities. Enter the KeySmart SmartLock, the latest attempt to unify those separate bits and bobs into a single portable fortress for your belongings. At first glance, it looks like it belongs in a secret agent's toolkit, dark, sleek, with a low-profile body that does not add bulk to your luggage's zippers. Imagine a device so small that you can attach it where your usual TSA padlock would go, except this time it has an integrated fingerprint sensor right on its face, built to recognize your fingerprint in well under 1 second. We are talking about a tiny little sensor that detects your thumbprint, or multiple prints, if you want to share your luggage with family members without sacrificing security, and eliminates the need for keys and combination wheels. This is the first sign that the travel industry might finally be catching up to the smartphone era. No more fiddling with zeros, ones, and eights on a plastic dial. No more patting down your pockets in search of that minuscule key. Just place your fingertip on the lock and click. It opens. The real twist, however, is that the KeySmart SmartLock doubles as a location tracker. That is right. Inside that slender housing, which is about the size of a typical TSA lock, you have an Apple Find My compatible tracking system. This means an iPhone user can rely on their phone's intelligence to get a precise fix on their bag's location. If your bag somehow wanders to the next airport gate or gets shuffled onto the wrong plane, you receive a notification. If the bag is left behind in a lounge or a cafe, you get a notification. Instead of praying that your bag's integration with a random brand's proprietary system might hold up across long distances, the KeySmart SmartLock uses Apple's massive network of devices to help locate items in real time. That is the difference between a vague guess of your bag's last known position and a more confident read on where it is right now, thanks to the wonders of Apple's crowdsourced location data. Of course, there is an alternative app from KeySmart themselves if you prefer it, but the Apple Find My functionality is clearly front and center for iOS enthusiasts. We should probably address the obvious caveat. What if you are an Android user? Well, that is a real consideration because KeySmart SmartLock, as currently stated, does not integrate with Google's tracking infrastructure, nor the fledgling universal protocols that some folks hope will unify device tracking across platforms. So, if you are sporting an Android phone, the main Apple Find My attraction is basically off the table, leaving only KeySmart's proprietary app. That might suffice, but you may not get the same coverage or convenience. This design choice might prompt more than a few raised eyebrows. It is intriguing that a wide swath of travelers will apparently need an Apple device to harness the full brilliance of this lock's location features. Yet, for Apple fans, it is a dream come true. There is no separate AirTag needed, no second chunk of plastic. The lock is the tracker. Now, let us pivot back to security. If your bag is rummaged through by people who are not within your circle of trust, that can be a nightmare. Perhaps you have endured that sinking feeling once or twice, noticing that something is missing from your carefully packed suitcase. So, KeySmart had to ensure the lock was TSA approved. In other words, TSA officers can unlock it using their universal key if they need to check your bag, and then relock it so that your journey continues smoothly. That solves the classic problem of, if it is not TSA approved, they might just cut through your lock, which always feels like an affront to your personal property. And if your fingerprint sensor battery dies mid-flight, a distinct possibility if you are traveling for an extended time, the SmartLock has a manual combination dial that you can set for emergencies. So, no matter what, your bag will not remain locked forever in the event of a dead battery. Speaking of the battery, that is another area where KeySmart claims to excel. Many of the small trackers on the market are sealed up like drums, and once their battery runs out, you have got to replace the entire device, contributing to e-waste and costing you extra money. KeySmart, on the other hand, says the SmartLock uses a replaceable CR1632 coin cell battery that is supposed to last roughly 4 months. When you are out of juice, you simply pop the battery out and place a new one inside. That is a far more eco-friendly solution, letting you keep your lock long-term rather than relegating it to the trash heap every time a battery dies out. Sure, an occasional coin battery purchase is still an expense, but it is minimal when balanced against the convenience of ongoing usage. This approach also benefits those who just want their device to be genuinely self-contained, rather than reliant on charging cables, USB ports, or any of the extra trappings that can complicate travel gear. We have to give the gadget credit. It really does address multiple frustrations at once. TSA compliance? Check. Biometric sensor to avoid keys and codes? Check. Apple. Find My tracking? Check. Replaceable battery? Check. The lock's minimal physical footprint also ensures it will not become another bulky obstacle that you have to wrestle with on your bag's zipper. So, on paper, it appears to be an elegantly designed travel companion, one that merges discrete technologies into a single streamlined product. Considering practical usage, some might wonder how durable that fingerprint sensor is. It sits flush against the matte exterior, so accidental bumps or scrapes should not harm it, but real-world usage will be the true test. Fingerprint sensors are not infallible, but if the technology is as robust as found on many smartphones, then we can expect a reliable experience. You might be thinking, sure, all of this is amazing, but how much will it cost me? The answer? About $29.99. For an Apple AirTag alone, you would spend a sum in that ballpark. For a standard TSA lock, you might spend a handful of dollars. Lump them together, and you have probably already spent more than the cost of the smart lock. Plus, you still have to juggle separate devices. With the smart lock, you are effectively paying for two major features in one: the security of a TSA lock and the convenience of an integrated tracker. Throw in the fingerprint biometrics, and the notion that you will not have to rummage for any keys or remember any codes might make the product feel like a bargain. That is, of course, if it lives up to the hype. Some critics might say, this is just another novelty item that will fail once the battery dies, or that the TSA will handle poorly. But we have seen glimpses of real promise here. Business travelers who jump from city to city practically weekly could be among the first adopters of this tool. Specifically, the possibility of losing a bag is a direct threat to their job performance if they arrive at a crucial business conference without their suits, marketing materials, or demonstration items. The smart lock, in that sense, becomes more than an accessory. It is a vital safety net. And for the everyday traveler hoping for a little peace of mind on that long-haul flight to see family or to explore a foreign destination, anything that reduces the stress of where is my bag can be worth the investment. Despite the fanfare, let us not gloss over any potential pitfalls. First, fingerprint sensors can get finicky if you are in a hurry, or if your fingers are wet, greasy, or covered in sweat from racing to your gate. You might find yourself briefly fumbling, trying to position your thumb just right, especially if the sensor times out. Another consideration is the reliance on Apple's network for searching your bag. If you live in a region with fewer Apple device users, or you have an older iPhone that does not handle precise location well, you might not get the immediate alerts you desire. However, the scale of Apple's device ecosystem is undeniably enormous, so for most travelers, this might be a non-issue. Then there is the matter of the TSA. We have all witnessed how sometimes, in the hustle and bustle of security checks, zippers can get broken, or personal property is not returned exactly the same way. Although the smart lock is TSA approved, there are no absolute guarantees that every inspector will handle it gently or lock it up again properly. That is always a wild card in the realm of travel, but at least we know there is a designated slot for the TSA master key. From a customs standpoint, it should be acceptable in numerous countries, but it always pays to check local regulations if you venture outside the scope of TSA officials. Nonetheless, the real story here is that the KeySmart SmartLock might be a harbinger of future travel tech. A decade ago, the notion of scanning your fingerprint to pop open your suitcase while also tracking its location in real time sounded a bit like science fiction, something that we would only see in spy movies. Now that it is an affordable reality, the question is, will the rest of the travel industry follow suit? Will we see major suitcase manufacturers start integrating advanced locks? Or, ironically, is this niche product going to remain the domain of those in the know? It illustrates how, for the longest time, the travel industry took a backseat to innovation, forcing travelers themselves to become creative. People using a patchwork of AirTags, TSA locks, zip ties, or suitcases with suspiciously large external batteries. Maybe, at long last, the tide is beginning to turn. Ask yourself, how many times have you fantasized about breezing through baggage claim with zero stress? You step off the plane, check your phone, see exactly where your suitcase is, and the moment you spot it on the carousel, you calmly pick it up. No rummaging, no fiddling with a code or tiny key. You place your fingertip on the lock, it recognizes you in well under 1 second, and pop, instant access. It feels like the level of convenience we have come to expect in other areas of our lives, such as unlocking our phones, paying for coffee with a tap, or commanding a virtual assistant to play our favorite music. If this product's concept excites you even a little bit, let me say this. Give a friendly thumbs up if this idea resonates, if only because it proves that you are not alone in craving more streamlined travel gear. Connecting with other curious travelers helps highlight what sorts of gadgets we should see more of in the future, and that bit of activity helps more people discover the conversation. We all know how chaotic airports can be, so every bit of relief we can find is worth a closer look. In analyzing the SmartLock's fingerprint experience, it is interesting to note that you can store multiple fingerprints, meaning you and your partner can both travel with one suitcase, if that is how you roll, without constantly passing around a key or sharing a code. Think about how that helps in large families. One parent, exhausted after a 10-hour flight, might send a teenager to grab the bag, confident that the child can unlock it using their stored fingerprint. It subtly cuts down on those minor panic moments. Wait, who has the key? Where do we stash it? Silence those worries and carry on. As for maintenance, flipping out the coin battery after roughly 4 months of use is not a major toil. In many airports, you can pick up a CR 1632 coin cell from a travel kiosk or from a small electronics store. Certainly, it is simpler than rummaging for a charger or discovering that your bag lock has run out of battery in the middle of nowhere. The entire battery housing on the SmartLock can be accessed with minimal fuss, which seems to be a critical selling point for frequent travelers. Nobody wants to dismantle half the device or risk losing delicate parts in a hotel room. But how about the dreaded scenario of leaving your bag behind at a coffee shop or in the trunk of a taxi? That is where the Apple Find My integration becomes an absolute beacon of hope. Instead of frantically calling local stations to see if someone turned in your bag, you open the Find My app on your iPhone, see the last location ping your bag gave off, and maybe realize, oh, it is still at that corner cafe. You either rush back to retrieve it or call ahead to let them know your suitcase is on its own behind a table. Even better, if some opportunistic thief tries to take off with your prized possessions, you might have a fighting chance of tracking where it ended up. Though obviously, real theft is a more complicated scenario. Still, the reassurance that you have an increasingly robust network behind your bag's location data is invaluable. Apple's ecosystem is enormous. From iPhones and iPads to MacBooks and Apple Watches, any of these devices in the vicinity of your lock can securely relay its approximate location. Hang on, you might be wondering if all this talk of Apple's network is overshadowing those who love Android-based phones. Frankly, it might be. KeySmart has chosen to lean heavily into iOS, presumably because Apple's network is a goldmine of location data. For a global traveler who swears by Android, you might have to judge whether the convenience of the fingerprint feature alone is still worth the purchase, or if you would prefer a more universal tracker. Again, the KeySmart app exists, but the coverage might be more limited under the hood. Only time will tell whether the brand decides to expand onto more platforms or if universal compatibility can become a real possibility. Beneath all these details lies a broader reflection on how travelers, for years, have been forced to accept that lost luggage is just part of the game. People talk about travel hacks to reduce the pain. Some say to keep valuables in your carry-on, others bury AirTags in secret compartments, and still others skip checking any bags altogether, choosing to go minimal for shorter trips. But not everyone can manage with only a carry-on, and not everyone wants to buy multiple trackers that might get lost or run out of power. The KeySmart SmartLock, in that sense, is more than just a gadget. It is a statement that the travel industry has space for improvement and that we can demand more from our gear. In light of all these revelations, let us offer a second invitation to cement your place in this growing community. If you find these fresh travel tech innovations worth talking about, consider subscribing to stay connected. It is remarkable how quickly technology can shift. One moment, we are fumbling with flimsy locks. The next moment, we are scanning our fingerprint to find out exactly where in the world our bag is. Subscribing signals to the wider travel tech scene that we crave more of these solutions. It also ensures you will not miss future updates. For instance, if KeySmart announces an advanced version of this lock, or if another competitor tries to dethrone them with a universal phone compatibility solution, as a subscriber, you will be first in line to hear about it. Another angle to consider, the lock's overall design. At the risk of sounding shallow, looks can matter a great deal in the era of Instagram posts and LinkedIn business travel updates. There is a sense of satisfaction in having a well-matched set of luggage equipment. The SmartLock's understated black shell, combined with the flush biometric sensor, might be visually appealing for those who want that sleek, modern vibe. That superficial detail should not be overlooked, because psychologically, using a device that appears well-built can enhance the feeling of assurance. It is as if the designers behind the SmartLock realize that travelers not only want convenience and security, they also want something that is not an eyesore dangling from their suitcase. Of course, no conversation on new gadgets would be complete without discussing future potential. Imagine if KeySmart's lock eventually integrated additional sensors, maybe a motion sensor that can alert you if the bag is being manhandled, or integrated data that gives you a log of exactly when TSA opened your bag. The possibilities are vast, and it will be fascinating to see how that further evolves. Perhaps entire lines of luggage will come with sliding compartments specifically shaped for these kinds of locks, taking synergy a step further. We might be on the cusp of a real revolution in how we guard and track personal items. If the cost remains accessible, mainstream adoption could skyrocket in the next few years. Until then, we are left with a simple question. Is the KeySmart SmartLock, priced at about $29.99, worth it? For the typical Apple user, it almost seems like a no-brainer. You get a TSA-approved lock that spares you from dealing with teeny keys. You gain the convenience of Apple Find My tracking, and you can rest easier knowing that if your bag does wander off, you have a better chance of locating it. Business travelers, families, or even solo adventurers who want top-notch security might appreciate the peace of mind. On the flip side, Android devotees may feel left out in the cold, at least in terms of the Apple-based tracking side of things. Whether or not this lock fully revolutionizes the industry, it is a glimpse into what is possible when different travel needs converge into a single device. Gone could be the days of endless rummaging for separate trackers, rummaging for TSA-approved locks, rummaging for keys, rummaging for everything. Instead, travelers might place their trust in one integrated solution. We can only hope that future releases continue to refine the approach, enabling an even more foolproof system for connecting your bag to you, ensuring that no matter which glitzy city or remote countryside you fly into, you have full transparency about your belongings. As you reflect on everything covered today, it is evident that the overall frustration with lost or misplaced baggage sits at the heart of modern travel anxieties. The KeySmart SmartLock dares to propose a remedy by combining the best of locks, trackers, and biometrics in a single, fairly small contraption. Whether it soars to the top of wish lists worldwide largely depends on how travelers weigh the pros and cons, how frequently they actually lose or misplace baggage, and whether Apple's Find My network is enough of a lure to offset devices that are more platform agnostic. Yet the seeds of the future are undoubtedly planted, and it is thrilling to witness a brand striving to unify these often disjointed features. So, the next time you find yourself preparing for a big trip, consider whether you want a scattered set of little gadgets stuffed into your luggage pockets, or whether you might prefer one item that does it all. After all, travel is supposed to be exhilarating, not stressful. Perhaps in a few years, we will look back at the era of separate trackers and tiny metal keys as archaic relics that belong in a display case labeled primitive travel solutions. For now, though, the KeySmart SmartLock at least promises a crack in the facade of the travel industry's reluctance to innovate, beckoning an era where losing your bag, or having it rifled through by strangers, just might be a rare occurrence. And that is an adventure many of us cannot wait to join.